All right, welcome to the Eric Tries Too Hard podcast, episode 124. I'm here with Brandon Lescure. How is it going, Brandon?
I'm good. I'm sleepy, but I'm good. Had a long weekend.
I promise I'm going to give you way more energy than you're ready to receive. And you know what? We can launch right into that. First off, Brandon is a Baltimore-based, Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
Baltimore area? Okay, cool.
Well,
And sometimes I'll be like, a Baltimore comic, and they'll be like, well, actually, I'm from Dundalk. And I don't think anyone from Dundalk is that prestigious, but
those people are morons.
Classic Maryland joke.
Just pick the fucking closest city to you and let that be yours. All right.
Yep, fair enough. Exactly, I agree.
I do not live in Baltimore, but I'm sure as hell not going to call myself a Bel Air based anything. That's stupid.
Well, you're basically Will Smith. It's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Well, so Brandon is a comedian from the Baltimore area, hosts a fantastic open mic that I've been to a bunch of times, which involves a talk show that he produces that I want to ask about. I'll ask you about later on. But let's just jump right into it. I mentioned you're very tired. This has been a long weekend for you. You had an amazing open for Damon Wayans Jr. At Magooby's in Baltimore all weekend. How was that? Any fun stories? Anything that happened there that was interesting?
Damon is he's probably the best headliner I've ever worked with.
Really?
Like,
Cool.
Just from a comedic level and just as like a person. He was so nice, very like relatable, easy to talk to, gave me a lot of great advice. I actually had to I drove him around because the way
you opened
the way it worked is that the club was supposed to not have to provide transportation for him, and then it ended up changing at the very last minute, so I kind of got to hang out with him all weekend because someone had to drive him around to and from the club.
That's not bad at all.
It's not bad at all. And he was a joy to work with. Great shows, but 5 shows. I'm pretty beat.
Whew. Yeah. How much time do you do opening up for those? 15?
I did 12.
Oh,
So
a modest 12. Yeah.
Very modest, tight 12.
That's really awesome. Was there anything in particular, whether it was advice he gave you or something that happened that was cool, or it was just a general amazing experience?
Well, I mean, he's I requested to have this date because I respect him as an actor and a comedian, and so I was really kind of expecting the worst because you never know, son of
every time I've met any idols of mine in music, they always are total dicks. I'm like, God damn it. Yeah. But no, that's cool. That's cool that he lived up to the hype because he's a very enjoyable guy on screen. It's nice to know that in real life it's the same.
Yeah, we actually ended up having a lot in common. We're kind of we're the same age. We have the same interests. We're both really into sports, into basketball. We're writers. We talked about a lot of different stuff, and we had a lot of the same viewpoints on things. I was just happy that he was a cool dude because you never know, the son of a famous comedian, millionaire. You never know what you're gonna get. And he was just it was a joy to work with him. I'm really happy that I got the opportunity. And also I'm moving to Los Angeles very soon, and he lives out there, and so he was giving me a lot of advice on where to live, where to go for mics, and how to get a job.
Yeah, so, well, that's invaluable. That's perfect. Okay, well, that transitions perfectly. Is that I know you've mentioned that you were moving to LA. What was kind of the deciding factor where you just went, now's the time, I'm gonna go?
Well, it's kind of been years in the planning to like, you know, make the move, leaving my job, and you know, to try to do something in like the field that I really love the most, which is it's you know, it's just kind of all around entertaining, and that's kind of the capital of entertainment, really. Like, and you know, so it's just kind of time to do that. Filmmaking, comedy, acting, it's just the only thing that I'm good at. And you know, so
yeah, that makes sense. So okay, well that actually I was gonna ask why LA as opposed to New York, but you kind of answered that in that where you're just like, no, it's the all around entertaining thing. So that leads me to something else I want to ask you about. When you host the Wits End open mic, which is where I know you from, which is attached to Magoobies. Great, even bar. I'd go drink there even when there's not a mic or anything. But like you host it, and to start the show, you do kind of a comedy late night talk show before the open mic, where you have a couple of comics on or actors on, and you talk to them about whatever. And you're hosting a talk show. You even have a sidekick, and like,
I do.
And your current sidekick has been on this podcast, Mr. Eric Glazer. Always want to shout him out. But like, so the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, I kind of get this. I get you're essentially figuring out a way to do practice for a live talk show. So what I want to ask is what got you to start doing that format, and is that something you're going to pursue when you go to LA?
Well, the answer to your second question is no.
Really?
No, not at all. What got me into that was that, okay, so I hate open mics with an absolute passion.
Yeah.
Before I mean, I don't think you might not be aware of this or not, but I like a number of years ago, I was in a comedy group called Color Be Funny.
Oh, okay.
And we ran like some of the biggest like showcase comedy shows in the area for like 2 years. We had 4 different rooms, had some really big name acts come through, and they were all showcase shows, you know, like just, you know, headliner, feature, and a couple guest comics. People got paid, you know, it was a lot of good time. And I hate open mics. That I like doing things that way. I like having pre-booked. I don't like I love people who are first starting out in comedy, but sometimes I can't stand listening to bad jokes. So I not to sound terrible about that, like you know, everyone needs to start sometime. I am still terrible, let alone, you know, like used to be. I am still not a good comic. Wow.
That's how every good comic feels, by the way.
Yeah,
it's like it doesn't matter. Any artist,
anyone who's been doing stand-up longer than me doesn't want to listen to me, and that trickles down. That trickles downhill. So when I first started my show at Wits End, it was a storyteller showcase.
Oh, interesting.
And then followed that with an open mic, because I wanted to eat up more time with something that wasn't an open mic. And then when Andrew, the owner, when he moved the time of the show back to 10 p.m. instead of 9 p.m., I was like, you know, it's a little later. Let's change the format. And that was when I came up with the idea for like the late night talk show, you know, so it's kind of something to differentiate my show from the other 3 shows that are on Tuesday nights there. Cause those are all just open mics. Like there's no pre-book, there's no nothing. And so I want something different. And, you know, it's a new skill. It's cool to interview people. Some of them I know well, and some of them I don't know at all until they sit down in the chair and we start talking. So it really stems from a couple things. Andrew moved the show to 10 p.m.
Number one.
and I don't like listening to bad comedy. So whatever I can do to eat up 2 hours with that's it.
Well, that may have backed the last Tuesday. That may have backfired on you when, what was it, 25 people showed up to the open mic.
God. Yeah, it was. You got up early.
I did.
Yeah, which
I showed up early as shit. I'm so happy about that. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I keep track of like when the people come, and so like honestly, if I end up sticking you at the end of the night, like one night, the next month you come, you're gonna be in a better spot. And I think last time you were there,
it was the very
late. Yeah.
Well, it was I remember that first time, and by the way, that was the first open mic. I was I guess my 5th open mic. It was the first time I ever got any sort of laughs. Maybe I got a couple chuckles. That was the first night I really got any laughs. And I think a big part of that was because before I went up, there was a table of 4 like really drunk people who were out of town. I didn't expect them to be comics. They all went up one by one and just fucking bomb. And then I told like jokes that were a little bit funny. And I think the crowd was like, thank God someone's not just drunkenly slurring into a mic.
Those people were awful.
That I'll never forget. But it was cool because you run a good room. Like that's what's impressive is that since you're not super into open mics, but you still run a really good room. Everybody seems to really like it, especially when you're hosting. And you host a great talk show. Like that's why I thought you were like, oh, is he gonna try to do the talk show thing?
Yeah.
Because I was like, he knows what he's doing. I was a little jealous, well, I mean in a positive way. I was like, I wish like he's good at I'm a podcaster. I like to ask questions. I was like, wow, this guy's good at getting interesting answers from his guests. I should learn something from this. So bravo to that. Absolutely.
Well, honestly, I'm good at conversation with people, especially when it's like a one-on-one conversation. Like, I think that's one of the things that I'm pretty good at, which is sitting down in a one-on-one conversation with really anybody. And so, it's a good skill to hone. I used to like plan questions ahead of time. And after a couple months of that, I realized like it wasn't working, and it was actually working better the less planning I did. Which is weird. Like I am a planner, like by nature. Like I plan everything to the T. And so it was like going against everything in my core to not plan it. Yeah. But it all happened like one month. I was too busy to really plan questions, and I was like, fuck it, just gonna show up and wing this. And it was like the best show that we had. And I was like, you know what, maybe I should try this. Maybe let's see how this keeps going. And since then it's just been maybe think of a couple things to talk about. Don't plan any questions, just see where the conversation goes. And it's been working out really well. But thanks, man. I appreciate that. I try to have a good show. But, I have no interest in being a talk show host.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense what you're saying on 2 counts. One, and for regular podcast listeners of mine, you've probably already heard me talk about this. When you write something and talk about it, ask about it, whatever it is, that comes from a different center of your different part of your brain than when you're just talking. So it's the same reason why if you ever heard like people who just watch comedy, they don't do it. They're just like, crowd work is the funniest thing. Why don't people do more crowd work? It's like, well, that's because it sounds so much more natural, and like mediocre jokes sound way funnier when you're coming off the top of your head. Yeah. Than if you've already played it, because it's more natural. It's all about the language center of the brain. So it makes perfect sense to me why you would just be like, well, if it's off the cuff, as it should be because it's a conversation, then it makes perfect sense. And also the fact that you're just like, that you are winging it is that you are, it's almost like and I've noticed this from watching you, it's like you're excited to learn about them. It's like you have guests on who, whether you know them or don't know them that well, it seems like and you could just be a great actor, I could, whatever, but it seems like you're genuinely interested in what they have to say. And if you don't know things about them and you ask them and they respond and you're like, oh shit, cool. That's much more genuine than if you've already done all the research and you're just asking them questions to feed to the audience the answers. Like you're genuinely interested. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I am. I like learning about people that I don't know about. And some of like the best interviews have actually been with people that I like didn't that honestly I didn't think like, all right, we don't really have I don't really know this guy that well or this girl that well. Like I wonder how this is gonna go. Like I haven't had a lot of conversations with Chris Hudson, like even though we've been
Yeah.
doing comedy together for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I see Chris Hudson more often than I see like my parents. But I
That's a good quote. I see Chris Hudson more often than I see my parents.
right. So
He's one of my first comics I ever had on this podcast, by the way. That's
yeah.
hilarious.
So I was like, who knows how this is gonna go? But it was like possibly top 5 like interviews we've ever had.
Yeah.
We just had so much fun, and you know, so
Yeah.
yeah, I see Chris Hudson more than I see my parents.
That's a really good line.
I hope.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
I really hope that neither of them listen to this podcast.
They're big. Listen, the Lescure family is a huge part of my listener base.
Good.
It's really, really there. Yeah, that founding block.
Maybe I should invite Chris Hudson to Christmas dinner this year.
You should. So you mentioned you enjoy, you're really good at like the sort of talent slide, the conversation, the one-on-one. That brings me to asking you about your short film or film. I don't know the correct terminology.
It's a short.
The back page.
Yeah.
Okay, short. Okay, good.
Kind of it's a longer short.
It's a long short.
But.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's my understanding of it. Is that it's a comedy horror film, but not in a kind of bullshit, like not bullshit, but cheating way of where you go, oh yeah, it's horror, but it's ironic horror, so it's funny. No. You have a bunch of beats that are all comedy, but also kind of just like two characters talking to one another. It reminds me of very much like Kevin Smith style, like solid, or even Judd Apatow style, solid conversation that's entertaining, interesting, moves the plot along, and it's funny. And then all of a sudden, it's a fucking horror twist. Yeah. And then you cut back. By the way, I'm going to monologue about your thing without giving any spoilers. And
Thank you. That's what I was going to say. We didn't talk about this ahead of time. I don't want to.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's important.
The point I'm trying to make is that you shift from comedy horror, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions about the short, but the long short, the big short. We'll call it the big short. The big short is that the first question I have is, how did you pull off that tone? Because it didn't feel jarring. Somehow you managed to give a comedy that turns into horror and back and forth in a way that didn't make me feel like I was watching two movies. How did you manage the tone of this film? Because you wrote it and directed it. I want to make sure everybody knows that. Yeah, so go.
Okay, so the thing with like filmmaking is that the things that you put on the paper, it can be amazing, and you can shoot an amazing film when you're out there with the camera. But really, all of the hard work happens after the fact, and like the tone of the film, I think is all in editing. You know, my partner on the film, Everett Glovier, and I, like, we worked really hard for months editing the film, and I think that you know, trying to get those beats down so that it didn't drag before we got to the horror, and it didn't. You know, and that it kept it tight, a tight pacing, because there's some stuff on the floor for sure. You know, before the horror, we decided let's get to this quicker, and it's all in the editing, man. Honestly, you know, I have a really talented, you know, crew of people that I've been, you know, blessed to like have around me, and so yeah, it's editing. That's honestly, like, for the most part, it's what's on the page, but you know, with the comedy, but it's all the hard work is in the editing. That's that. You get yourself a good editor, and you can make a better movie. Someone who doesn't, someone who has the balls to tell you, hey, this is not working. We need to get rid of these lines, or that we need to get rid of this scene. And because no one wants to kill their own babies. And like
that's fair.
there were some things that I was like, oh God, I love this little bit of dialogue, and Everett was like, yeah, but this shaves off like 30 seconds of time, and makes it a little bit breezier. And he's a really smart guy. So
that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is this your first film like this, in the sense of how long it is, or is like the amount of work that went into it?
So I have a background in acting, like for many years, so like almost 2 decades.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I've made sketch comedy with that group Color Me Funny. I wrote and directed. We put out 13 shorts. I would say I wrote and directed maybe 7 of them. So those are really that's like kind of where I honed a little bit of like the directing, was my years of acting, and then directing these short films. Because if you go back and watch any of the Color Me Funny shorts, I think they might not be funny to people, because I think comedy is very subjective. But I don't think anyone can argue with the quality, because we really strive to like put out high quality shorts compared to like a lot of other people who maybe they don't have the means to put out quality, and it's just kind of, they sound like shit, they look like shit. Could be funnier than our stuff, but we try. So I kind of honed that with that. But this is my first movie.
Okay, cool. Well, first off, that makes perfect sense. There's a whole because I've noticed, as every time I create something, I mean, I started in music, which we'll talk about music. I'm glad you brought that up in our text beforehand.
I started in music. I started in music before even acting. So yeah.
Nice. Well, but it's so interesting, because like every time I start something creative, in the end of the day, the thing that gets most criticized by someone who's not in the art form, film, music, whatever it is, it's usually the thing that like you had to work the least hardest on. Like the easiest example is like, today's a good example. We're starting this. I just finished watching the finale of Game of Thrones. It was amazing, blah, blah, blah. But like, that show gets criticized most for like its plot points. But what's funny, if you cut a pie of 100% of all the work that goes into making that show, the plot points are like 0.5%. There's so much more that goes into it. And that's how every other art form is, where it's like the things that it gets most criticized for is usually a decision that was made at the very beginning, and then all the other work that goes into it. And so like you said, another sketch might be funnier, but at the same time, it's like, what we had to work on? Making it quality. It doesn't matter how funny it is if the quality is so bad that you can't even enjoy the joke. Yeah. So it makes perfect sense, like the quality of the back page, where the thing looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Like, I can't believe how beautiful that looks. That's why, like, it makes, I totally get you going to LA, where you're just like, look what I can do. It doesn't even, the writing was good. The writing was bad. Like, that's what I told my wife when I watched it. I was like, man, even if the writing was bad, it'd be really good. It's still like so quality.
Thank you, man.
So another thing I wanted to ask with music was, who did the music on this, and how? Because that set such a great tone. And did you have any direction in that? Sorry if you didn't. I don't mean to like.
No. I see. Okay, so having a background in music before I started any of this stuff, I've been in a lot of bands, and since I've been in a lot of bands, I know a lot of great musicians. And I had been in a band with the guy Mark Nieto, who composed the opening title track. The title track was very important to me going in, was to set the tone, because 20 minutes of this movie is comedy for the most part, and so I wanted to have a piece at the very beginning that would set the tone very clear that this is not a comedy. And so, I worked pretty closely with Mark. Mark is an amazing musician. I did not write a note of this. but
Okay.
but I definitely had gave him guidance, because we have, almost 10 years of history working together. And some of the, I brought in another composer named Sir Kaz, to do some of the other beats in the film, like music wise. And he did a great job. I hadn't met him before, but he's brilliant. And but then some of the like original music came from friends of mine. Like I'm pretty good friends with this band called the Miracals. They're from LA. Was in a band with one of the guys, and they provided a song. And then one of my favorite bands ever from the Baltimore area, Carmela's Game,
Yep.
provided.
We're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
You have no idea the look on my face when that ending credit rolled. Yeah. I jumped off my fucking couch. You have no idea.
I love
yeah, me too. Okay. Well, you know what? The only other thing I want to say on the music of this movie is that, and it's so cool that you had, worked with the artist and you had the direction, but because I'm watching this movie and the opening credit, I'm like, oh my God, I feel this dread. Had you not told me it was a horror movie, I would have gone in going, oh, this is a comedy, just because I know you and you're funny. I would have gone in and go, oh, and I would have felt like, why do I feel so awful? What's this weight on my chest? But knowing what it was like, oh, this is perfect. And even through the comedy, I'm laughing, but I'm still feeling like, oh my God, what's about to happen? Like it works so perfectly. Now, with band stuff, let's just do Carmela's Game, get that out of the way, and then talk about everything else. So I want to ask you about your affiliation with the band. I saw them play an early show before they added the second guitarist, and then he left, and then another guitarist left, and then all sorts of local band shit. But there was a point for about 2 years where I befriended the bassist, and she lived near me, and she would just take me. I didn't have a car. I was like high school. And she just took me to all their gigs, and she was like, yeah, just take pictures of us and it's cool. But that was like, they're still one of my favorite bands ever. Art of Distraction. Fortunately, I was at their CD release for that, the Auto Bar. And that's one of my favorite records ever. Yeah. Like, I think that's unbelievable. And just one of my favorite bands ever. And to see them live, I have these memories of them live where it was just like, I've never felt music surround, even like huge bands, felt music surround me and just lift me out of my body like their music did and their live show did. So that's me gushing about them. Tell me, how did you get into them? And then I want to know about the bands you were in. Okay. But yeah, how did you get into Carmela's Game?
So I got into Carmela's Game because I was in a lot of bands, but I managed a band with some good friends of mine called Saravane. And they won like this Warped Tour contest, and they played Warped Tour, and they played a show, and on that same show was Carmela's Game. I had never seen them before, and they just fucking blew me away with how good they were live. And I just had been a fan ever since at that point. And I have all their records. I had only had very minimal conversations with any of the people until it came to editing the film. I hit up actually the bass player.
Mandy.
I hit her up and got in contact with her. She talked to everyone else in the band, and they gave me the thumbs up. And sight unseen, I don't think Mandy knows nothing about that. She doesn't know what the film is at all. Completely sight unseen. Thankfully, cool. The song that I chose is off
Cybercast: The Revolution,
which is I had picked that song when I was writing the movie. Because I think that song embodies what the film is actually kind of about, is that we're disconnected. We can get disconnected from reality when it comes to relationships, and we get so tied into trying to meet people online, or in Paul's case, meeting a girl in the back page of a newspaper. And
I like they used a 410 number
yeah,
for the girl. I was like, oh, it's beautiful Baltimore touch.
yeah, it is. And so I had picked that out, but thankfully that song is owned by them, because two of their records are not owned by them, but that one is. And so there was no one else to clear but them, and I love it.
I remember hearing demos of that record, and just because the first, that particular song, I don't know if I was there for the first show they played it, but I remember it was at least early on when they had written it. And that they used to introduce that as their death metal song. It's like Carmelo's Game, but death metal.
Really?
And, yeah, well, it was the heaviest thing they had.
I guess it is heavy.
That moment where it kicks in, like, I'm a huge fan of the one thing I was good at, just in not like on any kind of professional or even amateur, willing to show other people level, but editing was always something that I really had a strong suit in and I really had a passion for. Video editing, and I did a lot of. I've been in bands forever. I used to edit and mix my own bands, and when the way that you cut that particular song for the credits, along with the end, it was so perfect. Like, I couldn't believe, dude. I could not believe how perfect that cut was. Like, I told you I liked it, but even if I didn't like it, that moment would have made me like it. It was such a perfect moment.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that exact part was I knew that was going to be where it was going to be when I wrote the song, like, when I wrote the script, like, because I know how the movie ends, and I was like, I wanted a punch at the end, and that's what I wanted at the end, and when Everett and I sat down to edit it, we came up with the ending, the ending titles, and it just worked so perfectly.
The graphic was perfect too. Like, all of it, fantastic. Like, ending too. Like, and the ending is so hard to do in something like that, especially with the short amount of time that you have. And I was like, oh wow, that perfect. I get it. Perfect.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Well, tell me about your history in music. How'd you? That was even before acting. So how young were you, and how did you get into playing music?
Well, I started in punk rock bands when I was like 13.
And what year was that? So I know where I was during that time.
13. That would put me at 96, 97.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Playing.
So I'm about 3 years behind you.
Yeah, I like right into ninth grade, I started a punk rock band, like, right away. Started playing bass, taught myself, just was awful, was terrible at it.
That's fun bass, it's fine.
Did a couple did a couple of cassette demos, I played in metal bands in high school. I booked, that's when kind of like the whole production angle of like comedy shows kind of got their start by me producing punk rock shows. Like, I booked tons of punk rock shows, in my teenage years. I was the kid who would call up VFW halls and like trick old men into like letting me rent their hall for $100.
I booked a Carmela's Game show from some old lady running an antique shop once. Yeah, wow. Exactly.
Yeah. Those are the days. I mean, now there's no shows anymore because of guys like us who ruined everything for every person. So,
after enough hospitalizations with poorly security shows.
I can't tell you how many shows I booked where it ended with someone kicking a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And then going, oh, I guess we can't go here anymore. And
nope, that place is done.
So
that's funny.
I was in after high school, I was in a metal band that was, semi-successful, called Arcacia. And we put out a record, did a little bit of touring. I started a record label, had a couple bands on that, booked some pretty big shows. Then I was in a pop, like, kind of rock band called the Amelia Band. And we put out a record, did some pretty good amount of shows. And then when that kind of split up was when I realized, like, oh my God, like, no one plays music anymore, and so I kind of need to do something.
To see music anymore.
Yeah, so I kind of need to do something to bide my time, and I need it to be something that I don't need anyone else for. So I'm pretty funny. Let me do stand up. So,
well, sir, I am relating to you a lot on the whole, like, I'm tired of having to rely on a group of people.
Yeah.
Just like, I want to do an independent thing. And that's really cool because, like, it makes perfect sense why you're able to put on such good shows, because you come from this punk rock background where it's like, no one's going to give you anything. I feel like there's comedy, music, whatever, feel like crowds are just going to walk in, or artists who are talented are just going to want to work with you. But in punk and other alternative music, it's like, no, you have to make it's DIY. You have to make everything happen yourself, and really good skill to learn. That's what I've been trying to do. I've got a couple shows. I did a show last week that went really, really well, and I think a lot of that was just straight up all this punk rock work ethic of where if no one's going to do this for us, we need to do this to make it our own thing. And inspired by what you're saying now. That's really cool that you were able to make that work, and you're doing very well. So it's inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thanks, man. I subscribed. I'm gonna be a punk rock kid until like the day I die. Honestly, the DIY mentality will never like come out of me. That's just how it is in my blood. Like that you have to. You can't rely on other people. You have to like be able to. Think quick on your feet and keep moving, and you're right. No one's going to hand you anything. You have to keep working if you want to like succeed at stuff. And that's absolutely what I apply to everything that I do.
Makes perfect sense. It's like and it kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier with like how open mics can be really just like, I know everyone's starting out, but it's so tough to just like sit through a lot of like hit or miss and sucking and whatnot.
I cannot listen to like Orlando shooting.
I was gonna say another Trump joke. That's Trump joke. Yeah, we know his hair is shitty. We get it.
Like it's like I love people starting out to do stand-up. I really do love it. And there needs to be open mics. There really needs to be. Yeah. Like I said, everyone's terrible. We're all terrible to someone else for sure.
Yes.
So it's not like I'm not judging people from like I'm atop some mountain and they're far beneath me. It's just that I personally do not want to run an open mic.
It's nice is that you're doing it. Like you're putting on a show and then you're doing the mics. So it's like you're doing your part by letting people have stage time.
Yeah.
It's not your job to necessarily love it. Like that's bullshit. Like that would be ridiculous. But it's like one of the things I like about that environment where the crowd, because people complain about open mics for a number of reasons. Like people who go to them will complain about like, oh, nobody's in the mood to laugh. And part of that is, well, if you hear enough bad jokes, it's hard to be in the mood to laugh because you're so sick of it. But I was going to say, as a comic starting out, I love the room you run, and I love open mics where it's almost very downtrodden, because that lets me know, like, no one's going to give me anything for free. And it goes back to what we were just talking about, if no one's going to give you stuff. There are plenty of audiences at open mics or at other showcases that I've done where I can kind of tell, oh, if this sentence I say is framed as a joke, they're going to laugh.
Yeah.
Because they're in the mood to laugh. But it's like, if you really want to get good, and you got to start out somewhere and try to get better.
Yeah.
If a crowd is like, make me fucking laugh, asshole, and you make them laugh, then you have something.
Yeah.
Like that is invaluable.
Yeah.
The amount of like open mic like benefits of how hard it is great. And the fact that you kind of ride that line of, I'm going to do something creative for myself and then give other people an opportunity is fantastic.
Yeah, I would feel, honestly, if like Andrew at Magoobies said to me, Brandon, I don't want you to do the talk show anymore. I'm just wanting to pay you the money to run just a regular open mic, I would say just find someone else. Like, because it's just, I need to have some sort of creativity in this, or else it's just not worth it for me.
You mean crowd work in front of comedians isn't the artistic integrity you've been searching for?
I'm just not it. Like, I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to provide stage time for people who are looking for it, as well as do something creative for me. Like, I've hosted a lot of shows. And like the little bit of money is nice, but I don't really like need that as bad as, I would tell them to give it to someone else. So like the talk show, or before that, when it was like a storyteller showcase before the open mic, like that was for me, so that I don't slit my own throat on stage. And
Have you? Damn it, this is more of an off. Who gives a shit? If you don't want to answer this, don't answer it. But I think I'm just interested in knowing the answer. Have you ever considered like a themed open mic? Like, just based on what you said, like you tell it this is an open mic, but it's a storyteller open mic. You get 5 minutes, tell the best story you got in 5 minutes. Or is that a stupid idea because I'm so new?
Yeah, I mean, that is a thing for sure. There have been a lot of themed open mics. I know that there was one at the Crown called Bombing, and basically, like, you had to do material that was completely brand new, like that you've never done before. So that was something. And there are a lot of theme mics. There's a lot of theme showcases. I have a friend of mine runs a room in New York called I think it's what's the wedding thing? Old new borrowed in blue, where basically comedians have to do something, a joke that's old, a joke that's new, a joke that they blatantly have stolen. And then,
that's great.
Yeah, and then
a really offensive joke,
a really dirty joke.
Yeah,
I think that's brilliant.
That's really funny. Yeah.
When we were, so I ran out of people who could tell stories, and that was part of the reason why I changed out of the story, because I ran the storyteller showcase for almost a full year until I got to the point where it was just like, I don't know enough. Like, there aren't enough people who can tell stories. Like, not everyone is a storyteller comedian. It's actually quite surprising to me sometimes that some of the funniest people to me, like, aren't, when you put them on stage to tell a story, they are just dreadful, because it's just not how their brain works, like, comedically. And then
that makes sense.
And then there are guys who I thought are not funny, like when they're on stage doing like regular bits, but they killed at a story. So I ran out of people. Honestly, that
makes perfect sense. With like Bill Burr talks a lot about looking at comedy like a basketball player or any athlete would look at their game. It's like, all right, I got to work on my left foot, I got to work on my right dribble, I got to work on this, I got to work on my 3-point game, whatever it is. All these different facets of your game. You can be amazing at a couple facets, and then it's like you're still really great, but there's other things you've never necessarily worked at or that you don't have a natural talent at. So it makes perfect sense. You can be a joke teller but not a storyteller, and vice versa. And that's really interesting. How did you? Okay, let me ask you this then. You did it for a year. How did you go about finding those storytellers? Because, like you said, there were some. Like, you obviously had people on who you didn't necessarily think were great joke tellers, and you had people on who you knew were good joke tellers but not great storytellers. How did you go about or even did you go about honing the guests you had on that show to try to get the best bang for your buck?
Well, in Color Me Funny shows, like we at a certain point we were doing 6 shows a month. So I had a very long email list and database of comedians in the area, in Baltimore, DC, Philly, and so I just kind of picked from that list. You book shows for 2 years. If you stay organized, you'll come up with a list of people. And then eventually that list kind of does run dry though. When you were booking, like I was booking like 6, every month, it kind of ran dry by the end. No, but what you just said was actually pretty, I think, is about the honing other skills. I think that is very important. When I first started doing stand-up, like being on stage and being like natural and like on stage came very easily for me. Doing crowd work very easily for me. Just like I was comfortable. I could talk to anyone on stage. For me, it's always been about writing. That was actually the hard part, like writing the jokes. Like I could go on stage and like for like the first couple years I did stand up, it was like a roll of the dice. Like, if the things that came out of my mouth were funny, I would have a great set. But then sometimes, doing crowd work, I would put my foot in my mouth and just totally eat shit.
Yeah.
And so then it's been a couple years now of trying to learn how to actually write jokes that are concise and that have a good rhythm to them, and then apply that to, stage presence that just comes natural for me. And that I know a lot of people that it's the exact opposite. Some of my best friends are guys that if you combined us, we would be a fucking super comedian. Because I know people who are brilliant joke writers, but just don't have like that stage presence that comes natural. And until they find their like little middle area where it all clicks like together, they're rolls of the dice as well.
That leads into something I did want to ask you about perfectly. This is working swimmingly, by the way. I've noticed a lot of open mic hosts, or just hosts in general, end up having one of two things. They end up either being someone who was clearly naturally funny, and they learn how to make great jokes later, or vice versa. They're great joke writers who are figuring out how to make things funny. And you kind of just spelled it out right there, where you're like, you put the two together. Can I take a wild guess that you were funny and with your friends, you were the funny guy kind of growing up?
Yeah.
That
absolutely. I was definitely the funny guy. That's really what it is. Like you have to be able to combine those to be a great comedian. So, and for me, I still hate my jokes. Like I think I'm a terrible joke writer, but I'm getting there. I'm getting better. So
well, that makes sense with all the screenwriting.
Yeah.
That you're like, that's the biggest part of that skill that you're building. I'm hitting it on all fronts.
What's funny is that you brought up Kevin Smith when you said that like the dialogue was very Kevin Smith inspired. Yeah. For me, like I look at the movie as like if Annie Hall like was melded with Evil Dead.
Yeah.
And when the lead actor, who's a brilliant comedian in his own right, Brendan Crick, when he got on board the project, he asked me for like what like horror movies he should watch, like to kind of get a vibe, and I was like, oh well, you should watch like Annie Hall, you should watch When Harry Met Sally, you should watch
horror movies like that.
Yeah. He was like, well, wait, no, I was like, yeah, I don't want you to watch horror movies. That's your character does not know he's in a horror movie. You don't need to know like what horror movie tropes are like you need to watch this stuff because this is the important stuff. And actually Clerks was on that as well.
Nice.
Yeah, like I want you to watch Dante from Clerks, like a guy who's just exasperated and just never going to win. So
I like that, and that actually shines through. That's funny because like I write for, I contribute to a satire site called The Hard Times, and I work
Yeah.
for a couple of other, like or at least pitch to a couple of other like satire
Yeah,
sites.
I've read some of this satire stuff you write. It's good. It's very funny.
Oh, thanks, dude. That site, I mean, they set up The Voice. They set up all this shit. I'm just happy to contribute. But it's like the biggest thing that let me from being a guy who got rejected by every single pitch to the point where I actually have shit getting on in multiple places. Looking at comedy like, oh, you're not writing jokes. This isn't on stage. You just be serious. And it's kind of like the inverse of what you said. Don't watch a bunch of horror movies. Watch some comedies. Like you gotta be that person, and and you let me, the director and the writer and the editor, like let us all make this what it is. Your job is to play this role, and I think that's so important to learn what your role is and how to play it, whatever situation that you're in. So I thought that was really cool what you said. Well, tell me, what's next for you? Like, tell me all the things that are next, because you just had success. You got all these projects you're working on. What is next for you?
Well, next for me is, well, we're screening. Well, right now I'm waiting for a ton of film festivals to notify, and hopefully we get into a couple of those. But you know, some of the notification dates are between now and like October, so it's a waiting game on that kind of stuff. But until then, we're actually screening the film locally for the first time, and probably the only time, on Tuesday, July 19th at Magoobies, and we're screening it.
Nice.
Yeah, we're screening it with 5 other like short horror films, and we're calling it Magoobies Monster Madness, and it's free. And we have, like I said, it's my film, the back page, and 5 others. And it's going to be an awesome night of just like short horror films. And it's actually the same night as my Wits End show.
I was going to ask you about that. The mic's still on, right? I can show up.
The mic is still on. Yeah. You should show up early and watch the movie.
I was going to say that. We should all show up early. Any comic who wants on, show up early, watch the movie.
Exactly. And and that's so that's like the next thing. And then move to Los Angeles. That's really it. Like,
that's huge. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm hoping to be in LA by September. It's really just all about trying to get some last minute situations with buying a house out there, like nailed down. It's all about finding a place to live. So that's really it. I'm trying to keep my schedule like pretty like clear, just simply because I don't know when I'm gonna go, so I don't want to like commit to too much stuff. So yeah, July 19th is
my birthday party. It's next February. I'm gonna need you to commit hard by next week. It's okay. You can think about it for a week.
Yeah.
Don't answer now.
Thanks.
So, because you have so much going on, I haven't had a chance to ask you this. The last thing I want to ask you before plugs, then we'll go. What's the thing that got you into comedy? Whether it was not just necessarily doing it, but that like made you feel like, oh, this is something special. This is something I love to just enjoy. What got you into that?
Okay. Well, I grew up watching Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, and loved stand-up like as a kid. I would say like behind horror movies.
Yeah.
You know, behind horror movies, Richard Pryor was like the next thing. Like,
so that Richard Pryor Exorcist sketch on SNL was the greatest thing you've ever seen.
Yes. Like, so I love Richard Pryor, and so that kind of birthed that from me. And then what like directly got me into stand-up was giving speeches at a lot of my friends' weddings.
Dude, Did holy shit. I've always wanted to do stand up, and I was too chicken shit until like at the beginning of this year. But I gave a couple of best man speeches in the last year, and I was like, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's like harder. but I was like, I get it. This is what this is. That's so cool that you, yeah, that's awesome.
Yes. I mean, stand up is way harder than giving speeches, because I crushed at these wedding speeches for sure. And I was like, oh, this is easy. And so that was like directly what got me into doing stand up. Was I given like 3 wedding speeches, and I was like, you know what, fuck this, I can do it. And one of my good friends had just started doing stand up. I was like, if this schmuck can do stand up,
dude,
what am I doing?
A great the comedian who got me into stand up was Chris Rock. Just watching Bigger and Blacker on fucking repeat, like so early. But there's a great line from Patrice O'Neill about that, where he talks about how he used to see Richard Pryor like on video and Carlin, and he was like, those guys didn't inspire me to do comedy. I was like, I could never do what they do. But he's like, I would go to an open mic and see like 10 assholes do terrible jokes and go, oh, I can do that. They inspired me.
Yeah. I went to, and this is before your time. I went to a place called Red House Tavern.
Okay.
Which was, do you know Dave Schofer? Do you know who Dave? You do know who Dave Schofer is.
Let me give a quick Google, but you tell me.
Dave Schofer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know anybody.
Oh no, well he ran a bunch of rooms.
Okay.
And before Color Me Funny came about, Dave Schofer was like the guy who ran all of Baltimore, like independent comedy.
Yeah.
And we kind of ran him out of town because he was. But regardless, anyway.
Was he the former sound tech and talent liaison at Magooby's Joke House?
He is. He got fired from Magooby's.
Okay, he's a Facebook friend of mine, and I don't know how I know him. But yes, go on.
Anyway, I went to a show at Red House Tavern that Mike Finazzo was at.
Mike's funny as shit. Yeah, anyway, go on.
Yeah, and I watched a bunch of people do terrible comedy. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I can fucking do this. And the next week, I was on that stage, and you're right. That's the Patrice O'Neill's hit the nail on the head. It's not. I guess it really isn't Richard Pryor that inspires people. It's seeing like fucking Jack. Idiot up on stage.
Jack Idiot. Well, by the way, I'm sure there's some comic out there with their pseudonym is Jack Idiot.
Jack Idiot.
That's the thing, yeah. You come out with the Chester hat on. Like, yeah, Jack of Spades.
Jack Idiot. He's definitely a prop comic.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. He juggles. He
he dabbles in magic.
Oh my god. Well, we've created a whole character. All right, so give us any plugs you got, stuff you got coming up, stuff we can go to. This will go up early next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, and then any place we can find you online: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff.
Okay. Big one is like I said earlier, the premiere of our film, The Back Page. It's going to be at Magooby's Joke House in Timonium on July 19th, Tuesday, July 19th at 7 p.m. It's Magooby's Monster Madness. It's screening with 5 other films that are all horror films, and they're all fantastic. It's free, and directly following that the screening is Late Night with Brandon Lescure. I think I'm still working on the guests for next month, but I'm pretty sure the guests are going to be the comedians that are featured in my film.
Oh, cool! That's perfect. Well, you're a good marketing guy. That makes sense. Yeah.
I'm hoping, so it should be those people. And then as far as like where people can find me, I would say just Facebook. I still haven't adopted Twitter. I need to get on that. It's just not the way my brain works.
You might have waited. Yeah, me too. I respect that. You might have waited out the storm because Twitter is drying up. Facebook
Really?
seems to be where people are connecting a lot more. Yeah.
Well, I just recently read an article that said that like the majority of people under the age of like 23 do not use Facebook because their parents are on it, and that they're on Snapchat and Instagram.
Oh, Instagram is huge. Yeah. Yeah.
So I downloaded Snapchat and Instagram, but I haven't done anything on it.
But only to find your parents posting lewd photos. It's a real crazy how this is working. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel uncomfortable like with Snapchat. Something makes me weirded out by I thought Snapchat was just a thing to send like dick pics.
It was. I heard, and I could be full of shit, but I swear I heard this, that Snapchat is owned by some big porn company. Like that was like the goal. They fell ass backwards into Facebook like social media status. Like it's absurd.
Interesting. I should look that up. I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable about like. I'm gonna figure it out though. Before I move to LA, my goal is to figure out Snapchat and Instagram. I have 3 things I need to do before I move to Los Angeles: figure out Snapchat, buy a house, figure out Instagram.
In that order.
In that order. Those are the awesome. 3 things. So really just find me on Facebook, Brandon Lescure. I'm hoping that at some point everyone will be able to see the movie, even if you don't go to the screening, but it'll be probably another 6-7 months before that's possible. Hopefully we get in some screenings and like our Facebook page, the back page. That's about it really. I mean, like my big weekend with Ed Magoobies was just this weekend, so I don't have any comedy things I need to plug.
I feel like you didn't need to sell any tickets for that, so I think that went pretty well.
Yeah, no. I am doing a show, like an improv, like comedy mashup with the Baltimore improv group, Big. I'm doing that in, I think it's July 21st. And I think, that's coming up too. But
cool. Well, definitely everybody go, if you're in the Baltimore area, go see, go watch the film at the back page at Magoobies on July 19th, Tuesday.
Yep.
At 7 p.m.?
7 p.m.
Awesome. My wife would be so mad if she knew that I remembered all the things because you said it once. It usually takes me about 7 times before I remember. I missed like a third of our grocery list today. God damn it. Anyway, go see that. It's a fantastic film. It's funny. If you like horror, comedy, great film. Even if you like well shot and produced films, it's fantastic.
Thank you,
if you're
man.
a Carmel's Game fan, go see it. So definitely check all that out. And if you're listening to this, you already know about the podcast, but check out erictries2hard.com. Eric Tries Too Hard on iTunes, on what's the other thing? YouTube, and Eric Tries on Twitter. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so glad to talk to you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll see you at your open mics. And if I can get this like 1-year-old who lives in my house to just be quiet for like one day, I'll definitely make your screening. That'll be no problem.
Cool.
She's a real, she's cute, but she's a pain. Anyway, I will talk to you soon. And it was great talking to you, man. Thanks for coming on.
See ya.
All right. Catch you later. Peace.